The Christmas lights twinkled mockingly as I watched my wife's family pass around their expensive gifts, each one accompanied by theatrical gasps of appreciation. 23 years of marriage, and I still felt like the hired help at these gatherings. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had something special planned. "Jonas, dear," my mother-in-law Susan chirped from her throne-like armchair, "I don't see anything under the tree from you. Running a little short this year?" The room erupted in polite laughter that cut like glass. I smiled, setting down my untouched eggnog. "Actually, I brought something for everyone. It's in the car." The Blackwood family mansion reeked of old money and older grudges. Kelly, my wife, sat perched on the edge of the Italian leather sofa, her manicured fingers drumming nervously against her wine glass. She knew something was coming. After 15 years of building custom furniture in my workshop while she climbed the real estate ladder, I'd learned to read the subtle tells that betrayed her anxiety. "Well, don't keep us waiting," Martin Blackwood boomed, adjusting his Harvard tie. My father-in-law had never let me forget that I'd dropped out of community college to start my woodworking business. Though I can't imagine what a carpenter could afford that would interest us. I excused myself and walked to my truck, retrieving the small wrapped box from the passenger seat. The December air bit at my face, but I felt warm inside. 15 months of careful planning had led to this moment. Back inside, I placed the modest package on the coffee table. "This is for all of you, a family gift." Kelly's sister Rachel leaned forward, her Botox-frozen face a tempting curiosity. "How quaint. What could possibly be for all of us?" "Open it and see." Martin tore away the wrapping with theatrical flourish, revealing a plain wooden box I'd crafted myself. Inside, nestled in red velvet, lay a stack of photographs and documents. The first photo showed Rachel's husband David emerging from the Riverside Motel with his 22-year-old secretary. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago. Rachel's wine glass shattered against the marble floor. "Jonas!" Kelly hissed. "What the heck is this?" I pulled out the next item, bank statements showing Martin's gambling debts. $50,000 lost at the Foxwoods Casino in the past 6 months. Money embezzled from his law firm's client trust fund. "I've been busy," I said, my voice steady as a rock. "Turns out when people think you're just a dumb carpenter, they don't watch what they say around you." Susan grabbed for the box, but I was faster. The next document detailed her affair with the family priest, Father McKenna. Hotel receipts, love letters, even a pregnancy scare from 1987 that explained why Kelly looked nothing like Martin. "You son of a witch!" Martin lunged toward me, but his arthritis made him slow. I sidestepped easily. "There's more," I continued, enjoying their horror. "Kelly's substance problem, funded by skimming from her real estate commissions. Rachel's tax scheme. David's illegal material. Yes, I found that too and reported it to the authorities yesterday." The room fell silent, except for Susan's quiet sobbing. Kelly found her voice first. "You're insane. No one will believe this." I smiled and pulled out my phone, showing them the recording app. "I've been documenting everything for over a year. Every cruel comment, every humiliation, every time you people treated me like dirt. But more importantly, I've been investigating. Amazing what a motivated person can discover with enough patience." "What do you want?" Martin's voice cracked. "Nothing from you. This is just the beginning." 3 months earlier, I'd been sanding a mahogany dining set when Rita, my shop assistant, burst through the door with news that changed everything. "Joe, you need to hear this." Rita was 63, tough as nails, and had worked for me for 8 years. She'd become like a sister. "I was at Murphy's bar last night when I overheard Kelly talking to that developer, Blake Armstrong." I set down my sandpaper. "What about?" "They're planning to have you committed, Joe. Kelly's been telling people you've been having episodes, getting violent. She's building a case to have you declared mentally incompetent so she can take the business, the house, everything." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "That's impossible. I've never laid a hand on her." Blake was laughing about it. Said once you're out of the way, Kelly can sell your workshop to him for his new development project. They've been planning this for months. I sat down heavily on my workbench. "How long have they been together?" Rita's face softened. "Joe, honey, everyone in town knows. It's been going on for 2 years." That night, I started my investigation in earnest. I installed security cameras around my property, legally since it was my land. I began keeping detailed records of every conversation, every interaction with Kelly and her family. I hired a private investigator named Frank Russo, a retired cop who specialized in infidelity cases. Within 2 weeks, Frank had documented Kelly's affair with Blake Armstrong. Photos, video, hotel records, everything we needed. But as I dug deeper, I discovered the affairs were just the tip of the iceberg. Kelly had been systematically stealing from her real estate clients, skimming money from escrow accounts. Blake was helping her launder the funds through his development company. They'd stolen over $200,000 in the past 3 years. But the real bombshell came when I traced Kelly's family connections. The Blackwoods weren't just corrupt, they were dangerous. Martin's law firm was a front for money laundering. Rachel's husband David was involved in a child trafficking ring. Susan's charity work was a cover for pills distribution. I'd married into a criminal family, and they'd been planning to destroy me all along. I decided to start with Blake Armstrong. If Kelly wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. Blake owned a luxury car dealership in addition to his development business. Every Friday, he took his vintage Mustang to the country club for drinks with his wealthy friends. It was his pride and joy. A 1970 Shelby GT500 worth more than most people's houses. I followed him there on a cold February evening, parking my truck in the shadows of the club's parking garage. Blake was inside, no doubt bragging about his conquests while planning to steal my life's work. I approached the Mustang with my toolbox. 23 years of working with my hands had taught me exactly how to disable a car without leaving obvious evidence. I loosened the lug nuts on all 4 wheels, not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to create problems when he hit highway speeds. Next, I poured a mixture of sand and metal shavings into his gas tank. The engine would run for a while, then gradually destroy itself from the inside. Finally, I used a small drill to create tiny holes in his brake lines. The fluid would leak slowly, causing brake failure within a few miles of driving. As I worked, I heard footsteps echoing through the garage. Blake was returning earlier than expected, probably drunk and looking for his car. I quickly gathered my tools and moved to the shadows behind a concrete pillar. Blake stumbled toward his car, fumbling with his keys. He was definitely intoxicated. Perfect for my plan. Drunk drivers had accidents all the time. He started the engine and backed out of his parking space. I watched as he drove toward the garage exit, the Mustang's engine purring smoothly. He'd make it a few miles before the problem started. 20 minutes later, my police scanner crackled with news of a single car accident on Route 9. Blake Armstrong's Mustang had crashed into a guardrail after suffering brake failure. The driver was injured but alive, exactly as I'd planned. I drove home with a satisfied smile. Kelly would get the message soon enough. The next morning, Kelly was pacing our kitchen like a caged animal, her phone pressed to her ear. "What do you mean brake failure? That car was perfect." I buttered my toast calmly, listening to her panic. "Something wrong?" "Blake was in an accident last night. His car just fell apart while he was driving." "That's terrible," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "Those old cars can be unreliable. Good thing he wasn't ended." Kelly's eyes narrowed. "You seem awfully calm about this." Should I be upset? I barely know the man. But Kelly knew. I could see it in her face. The dawning realization that her husband might not be the harmless fool she'd taken me for. That afternoon, she came to my workshop with Rachel in tow. I was working on a custom bookshelf for a client, the smell of cedar filling the air. "We need to talk," Kelly announced, her voice sharp with authority. I set down my chisel. "About what?" "About Blake. About his accident. About what you might know about it." Rachel stood behind Kelly like a bodyguard, her arms crossed. "We know you've been acting strange lately, Jonas. Kelly's told us about your episodes." "Episodes?" I laughed. "What episodes would those be?" "The paranoia," Kelly said. "The accusations, the way you've been watching me, following me around town." "I haven't been following you, Kelly. I've been working, same as always." "Bees," Rachel stepped forward. "We know you hired that private investigator. We know you've been spying on us." I smiled. They were panicking, making mistakes. "If you know about Frank Russo, then you know what he found." Kelly's face went white. "I don't know what you think you've discovered, but I know about the money, Kelly. The skimming from escrow accounts. I know about your family's business arrangements. I know about everything." The workshop fell silent except for the hum of my dust collection system. You can't prove anything, Rachel said, but her voice lacked conviction. I walked to my filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. Bank records, hotel receipts, photos, audio recordings, video surveillance. I've got enough evidence to send all of you to prison for the next 20 years. Kelly lunged for the folder, but I pulled it away. That's just copies. The originals are somewhere safe. What do you want? Kelly's voice was barely a whisper. I want you to leave. Pack your things and get out of my house. File for divorce if you want. I'll make sure you get exactly what you deserve. This is my house too, Kelly snarled. You can't just throw me out. Actually, I can. The house is in my name only. Always has been. Your name was never added to the deed. Rachel grabbed Kelly's arm. Come on, we need to call Dad. As they left, Kelly turned back to me. This isn't over, Jonas. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I called after her, I know exactly what I'm dealing with. The question is whether you do. That night, I was working late in my shop when I heard the sound of breaking glass. Someone had thrown a rock through my front window. Attached to it was a note, drop this or you'll regret it. I called the police and filed a report, but I knew they wouldn't find anything useful. The Blackwoods were too smart to leave evidence. The next morning, I arrived at my workshop to find the lock had been cut. Inside, my office had been ransacked. File cabinets overturned, papers scattered everywhere, my computer missing. But they'd made a crucial mistake. In their haste, they'd overlooked the hidden safe I'd installed behind a false panel. All my important documents were still secure. I was examining the damage when I heard a car engine outside. Through the window, I saw Blake Armstrong climbing out of a rental car, his left arm in a sling from the accident. He wasn't alone. 2 large men in expensive suits flanked him. I quickly grabbed a hammer from my workbench and moved toward the back door, but they were already inside, spreading out to surround me. Hello, Jonas, Blake said, his voice cold. We need to have a conversation. About what? About the evidence you think you have. About the accident you caused. About the consequences of messing with the wrong people. One of his companions, a massive man with scarred knuckles, cracked his neck menacingly. Mr. Armstrong would like his property back. What property? The files, the photos, the recordings, everything. I laughed. Even if I gave you everything I have here, it wouldn't matter. Copies are already with the FBI, the State Attorney General, and the IRS. Blake's face darkened. You're lying. Am I? Check your bank accounts lately? Notice any unusual activity? Federal investigations take time to develop, but when they move fast. The scarred man stepped toward me, but Blake held up his hand. Wait. You see, Blake, the problem with being a criminal is that eventually someone notices the patterns. Money flowing in unusual directions. Properties bought and sold for suspicious amounts. Tax returns that don't match lifestyle. You don't understand what you've started, Blake said. These people don't just steal money. They end people who threaten them. Then they should have thought of that before they decided to destroy my life. The scarred man moved again, but this time I was ready. I swung the hammer in a wide arc, catching him in the ribs. He doubled over with a grunt of pain. Blake shouted something, but I was already running toward the back door. Behind me, I heard the sound of pursuit. Heavy footsteps on the wooden floor of my workshop. I burst through the door and sprinted toward the tree line behind my property. The woods were thick with pine and oak, providing plenty of cover. I'd played in these woods as a kid, knew every trail and hiding spot. The chase lasted 20 minutes, weaving through undergrowth and over fallen logs. My pursuers were city men, unused to rough terrain. I could hear them crashing through the brush behind me, getting farther away with each passing minute. Finally, I emerged at the old quarry on the far side of the woods. My truck was parked there. I'd moved it that morning, anticipating trouble. I drove home by a circuitous route, checking my mirrors constantly. Kelly was waiting in the driveway when I arrived, and her face a mask of fury. You stupid bastard, she screamed. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've defended myself against criminals, including you. They're going to end us both now. Blake's partners don't negotiate. They eliminate problems. For the first time since this started, I saw genuine fear in Kelly's eyes. Not fear of exposure or legal consequences, but fear for her life. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you decided to betray your husband. The next morning, I called Rita and asked her to meet me at Murphy's Bar. The old Irish pub was neutral territory, a place where working-class people gathered to drink and complain about their problems. Gus Murphy, the owner, was a friend from high school. He'd served 2 tours in the Middle East before coming home to run his family's business. If anyone could help me navigate this situation, it was Gus. I found them both waiting in a back booth, nursing coffee and looking worried. "Joe," Rita said, "what the heck is going on? There are rumors all over town about you and Kelly." "It's complicated." I sat down and ordered a beer, even though it was only 10 in the morning. "Kelly's been stealing money from her clients. Her whole family's involved in organized crime. They've been planning to have me committed so they can steal my business." Gus whistled low. "Jesus, Joe. How deep does this go?" "Deep enough to get people ended. Blake Armstrong came to my shop yesterday with muscle. They want the evidence I've collected." "What evidence?" Rita asked. I pulled out my phone and showed them photos Frank Russo had taken. Kelly and Blake in compromising positions. Documents showing money transfers, recordings of conversations about their plans. "Holy crap," Gus breathed. "This is like something out of a movie. It gets worse. I sabotaged Blake's car. He crashed, but he survived. Now they know I'm not the helpless victim they thought I was." Rita grabbed my arm. "Joe, you need to go to the police." "I can't. Martin Blackwood has connections throughout the legal system. Half the judges in this county owe him favors. If I go to the local cops, I'll be dead within a week." Gus leaned forward. "What do you need from us?" "Witnesses. People who can testify about what they've seen and heard. The Blackwoods have been operating in this town for decades, but they've made enemies. I need to find those enemies and convince them to speak up." "I know a few people," Gus said slowly. "Construction workers who got screwed over by Blake's development company, small business owners who lost contracts because they wouldn't pay Martin's bribes. And I know some of Kelly's former clients," Rita added. "Women who lost their deposits when deals fell through suspiciously." "Good, but we need to be careful. These people are dangerous, and they're watching everything I do." As if summoned by my words, the bar's front door opened and Detective Sarah Hayes walked in. She was a 20-year veteran of the force, known for her integrity and her refusal to play political games. She spotted me immediately and walked over to our table. "Mr. Malloy, I'm Detective Hayes. I'd like to speak with you about the break-in at your workshop." My heart sank. Had the Blackwoods gotten to her already? "What about it?" "We found some interesting evidence at the scene. Fingerprints that match several known associates of organized crime figures. I think you might be in more danger than you realize." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, but her eyes were clear and direct. "What kind of danger?" "The kind that gets people disappeared. Can we talk privately?" Detective Hayes and I moved to a corner booth, while Rita and Gus watched nervously from across the room. Hayes ordered coffee and studied me with intelligent brown eyes. "How much do you know about your wife's family, Mr. Malloy?" "More than I used to, less than I probably should." She smiled grimly. "The Blackwoods have been on our radar for 15 years. Money laundering, racketeering, corruption of public officials. But they're smart, and they're connected. Every time we get close to building a case, witnesses disappear or evidence gets contaminated." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you might be our best chance to finally take them down. You're an insider who's gathered evidence independently. If you're willing to cooperate, we can offer you protection." I sipped my beer, thinking, what kind of protection? Witness relocation if necessary. But first, we need to see what you've got. I pulled out my phone and showed her some of the photos Frank had taken. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the images. "Jesus Christ, where did you get these?" "I hired a private investigator. Everything was obtained legally. This is enough to start a federal investigation. Financial crimes, RICO violations, public corruption. We're talking about decades in prison for all of them. There's more. Audio recordings, bank records, hotel receipts. I've been building this case for over a year." Hayes leaned back in her seat. "Why didn't you come to us sooner?" "Because I didn't know who I could trust. Martin Blackwood has judges in his pocket. For all I knew, half the police force was on his payroll too." "Fair enough, but we need to move fast. If they suspect you're cooperating with law enforcement, they'll either end you or disappear." "They already suspect. Blake Armstrong and his friends paid me a visit yesterday. I had to run for my life." Hayes cursed under her breath. We need to get you somewhere safe while we process this evidence. I'm not running. This is my town, my business, my life. If they want to fight, I'll give them one. Mr. Malloy, these aren't ordinary criminals. They've ended people for much less than what you've done. Then I guess I better make sure I get them before they get me. Hayes studied my face for a long moment. You're serious. Dead serious. I've spent 23 years being treated like dirt by these people. They've stolen from me, lied to me, and planned to destroy everything I've worked for. Now they wanted to end me? Bring it on. What do you need from us? Time? And maybe some unofficial backup when things go sideways. Hayes smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. I think we can arrange that. That evening, I returned home to find Kelly packing suitcases in our bedroom. She looked up when I entered, her face a mixture of fear and defiance. I'm leaving, she announced. This has gone too far. Running away with Blake? Running away from you? You've lost your mind, Jonas. The man I married would never have done the things you've done. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her fold clothes with shaking hands. The man you married was a fool. He believed in love and loyalty and family. But that man is dead. You ended him. I never wanted it to go this far. The affair, the money, it was supposed to be temporary. Just until we could figure things out. Figure what out? How to steal my business. How to have me committed. How to destroy my life completely. Kelly stopped packing and turned to face me. You don't understand. My family, they're not people you can just walk away from. Once you're in for life. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you married an outsider. I was trying to protect you. If you just stayed quiet, played your part, none of this would have happened. I laughed bitterly. Played my part as the oblivious husband while you stole from clients and planned my destruction? No thanks. Kelly zipped up her suitcase and headed for the door. Blake's people are coming for you tonight. If you're smart, you'll be gone when they arrive. Let them come. I'll be waiting. After Kelly left, I called Detective Hayes and told her about the threat. She promised to have unmarked cars in the area, but warned me that official intervention would have to wait until a crime was actually committed. I spent the next hour preparing my workshop for visitors. I'd learned a few things about security during my investigation, and my years of working with tools had given me some creative ideas about home defense. I started by disabling the main electrical panel, plunging the building into darkness. Then I scattered small pieces of metal and wood across the floor, painful obstacles for anyone moving in the dark. I positioned mirrors to reflect moonlight in confusing patterns and rigged several of my power tools to activate remotely. Finally, I took position behind my workbench with a nail tool, a circular saw, and a baseball bat. If Blake's friends wanted a fight, they'd get one they'd never forget. I didn't have to wait long. Around midnight, I heard the sound of car doors closing in the parking area behind my shop. Footsteps crunched on gravel, moving cautiously toward the building. The back door exploded inward as someone kicked it open. 3 figures moved into the darkened workshop, using flashlights to navigate the obstacle course I'd created. Malloy, one of them called. We know you're in here. Make this easy on yourself. I activated the circular saw remotely, its screaming blade sending sparks across the room. The intruders dove for cover, cursing and shouting. What was that? Some kind of booby trap. Watch where you step. I triggered the nail tool next, sending a stream of 3-inch nails into the wall above their heads. The sharp reports echoed through the workshop like tool shots. Jesus Christ! He's got a tool! That's not a tool, you idiot. It's a nail tool. One of them stepped on a piece of broken glass, yelping in pain. Another walked into a low-hanging beam I'd repositioned earlier, stunning himself temporarily. But they were persistent. Gradually, they worked their way toward my position, using their flashlights to spot and avoid my traps. When the first man rounded the corner of my workbench, I was ready for him. The baseball bat caught him in the solar plexus, doubling him over. A knee to the face sent him crashing backward into a stack of lumber. The second attacker came from my left, wielding a crowbar. I grabbed a chisel from my workbench and slashed at his wrist, opening a deep cut that made him drop his tool. A hammer blow to his shoulder sent him sprawling. The third man was smarter. He stayed back, using his flashlight to blind me while he looked for an opening. You're only making this worse for yourself, Malloy. Mr. Armstrong just wants to talk. Then tell Mr. Armstrong to make an appointment during business hours. He rushed me then, hoping to overwhelm me with speed and aggression. But 23 years of physical labor had kept me in better shape than most men my age. I sidestepped his charge and brought the bat down on his knee, hearing the satisfying crack of breaking bone. All three attackers were down now, groaning and injured on my workshop floor. I called Detective Hayes and told her to bring an ambulance. And body bags? She asked. No, I'm not a butcher, just a carpenter who's tired of being pushed around. The next morning, the story was all over town. 3 men arrested for breaking and entering, assault, and attempted homicide. The Blackwood family's connection to organized crime was suddenly front-page news in the local paper. I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when Martin Blackwood called. You've made a serious mistake, Jonas. Have I? Seems to me I defended myself against criminals who broke into my property. Those men were just the beginning. You have no idea how deep this goes or how many people you've angered. Then maybe it's time for those people to learn some consequences. Meet me at my office this afternoon. We need to discuss terms. Terms for what? Your surrender, your silence, your disappearance. I laughed. I'll be there at 2 o'clock, but I'm not surrendering anything. Martin's law office occupied the top floor of the First National Bank building, a monument to old money and older corruption. I arrived precisely at 2, carrying a briefcase full of evidence and a digital recorder. Martin was waiting behind his massive oak desk, flanked by 2 younger lawyers who looked nervous and out of their depth. Jonas, thank you for coming. Let's skip the pleasantries, Martin. What do you want? I want you to sign these papers. He slid a document across the desk. A confession that you've been mentally unstable, that your accusations against my family are the product of paranoid delusions, and that you agree to seek psychiatric treatment. I picked up the papers and read them carefully. In exchange for what? Your life. In a generous settlement that will allow you to start over somewhere far from here. How generous? $500,000, cash, tax-free. I set the papers down and opened my briefcase. That's an interesting offer, but I have a counter-proposal. I pulled out photographs of Martin's gambling debts, his embezzlement from client accounts, his connections to known crime figures. You confess to everything. You resign from the bar. You make full restitution to everyone you've stolen from, and you turn state's evidence against your criminal associates. Martin's face went purple. You arrogant bastard. Do you think you can threaten me in my own office? I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you a chance to avoid spending the rest of your life in federal prison. One of the younger lawyers whispered something in Martin's ear. Martin's expression shifted from anger to concern. What exactly do you think you know? I pulled out more documents. Bank records showing money laundering through fake real estate transactions. Photos of Martin meeting with known crime bosses. Audio recordings of conversations about bribing judges and intimidating witnesses. I know everything, Martin. Every dirty deal, every payoff, every crime you've committed in the past 20 years. You can't prove any of this in court. Actually, I can. The FBI has been very interested in my evidence. They're preparing indictments as we speak. Martin slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 72 years. What do you want? I want my life back. I want Kelly to disappear. I want Blake Armstrong and his associates to leave me alone. And I want all of you to face justice for what you've done. And if we refuse, then you'll find out what it feels like to be destroyed by someone you underestimated. The annual Blackwood family Christmas party was legendary in our town. A gathering of the wealthy and powerful, held in the ballroom of the Riverside Country Club. This year, I'd received an unexpected invitation. One last chance to be reasonable, the note had said. Come alone. I arrived at 8 o'clock wearing my best suit and carrying a small wrapped package. The ballroom was filled with judges, politicians, business leaders, and their families. Everyone who mattered in our little corner of the world. Kelly spotted me immediately, her face going pale. She was standing next to Blake Armstrong, who wore his arm sling like a badge of honor. Martin and Susan Blackwood held court near the bar, surrounded by sycophants and admirers. I made my way through the crowd, smiling and nodding at people who'd ignored me for decades. Tonight, I commanded attention. Tonight, I was the most dangerous person in the room. Jonas! Martin boomed when he saw me. What a surprise. I didn't expect you to accept our invitation. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I brought a gift for the family. I set the wrapped package on the gift table, next to expensive bottles of wine and jewelry boxes. Several people gathered around, curious about what the town's notorious carpenter had brought. "Shall I open it now?" Martin asked, his voice tight with forced joviality. "Please do. I think everyone will find it interesting." Martin unwrapped the package carefully, revealing a wooden box I'd crafted from cherry wood. Inside, nestled in black velvet, were USB drives, photographs, and documents. "What is this?" Susan asked, but her voice suggested she already knew. I stood up, commanding the attention of the entire room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to propose a toast." The ballroom fell silent. Even the waitstaff stopped moving. 23 years ago, I married into what I thought was a respectable family. I was wrong. Tonight, I'd like to share some family photos with all of you. I pulled out the first photograph. Martin leaving the Foxwoods Casino at 3 a.m, clearly intoxicated and clutching a stack of IOUs. This is my father-in-law, Martin Blackwood, after losing $50,000 of his client's money in a single night of gambling. Gasps echoed through the room. Martin lunged toward me, but 2 of his own security guards held him back. I displayed the next photo, Susan and Father McKenna in a passionate embrace outside the Riverside Motel. This is my mother-in-law, Susan, with her spiritual advisor. They've been having this particular kind of spiritual guidance for 15 years. Susan screamed and tried to grab the photo, but I held it high above my head. And here's my wife Kelly with her business partner Blake Armstrong, discussing how to have me committed to a mental institution so they could steal my property. The room erupted in chaos. Voices raised in shock, anger, and disbelief. Several prominent citizens headed for the exits, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. But I wasn't finished. The USB drives contained bank records showing how the Blackwood family has been laundering money through fake real estate transactions, how they've been bribing judges and intimidating witnesses, how they've turned this town into their personal criminal enterprise. Blake Armstrong broke free from the crowd and charged toward me, his good arm raised to strike. I sidestepped his clumsy attack and grabbed him by his injured arm, twisting until he screamed and dropped to his knees. This is the man who's been sleeping with my wife while planning to destroy my business, a coward who sends thugs to do his fighting for him. I released Blake and turned back to the crowd. The FBI will be making arrests tomorrow morning. I suggest anyone who's taken bribes or participated in illegal activities turn themselves in tonight. It will go easier for you. Detective Hayes appeared at the ballroom entrance, flanked by federal agents. The trap was closing. Martin made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "This man is mentally ill. He's been stalking my family, making wild accusations." "Actually," Detective Hayes interrupted, "Mr. Malloy has been cooperating with a federal investigation into organized crime and public corruption. Everything he's told you tonight is supported by evidence that will hold up in court." The room fell silent, except for Susan's quiet sobbing. I picked up my gift box and walked toward the exit, the crowd parting before me like the Red Sea. At the door, I turned back one final time. "Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you enjoy your gifts." Kelly ran after me, tears streaming down her face. "Jonas, please, we can work this out. I'll leave Blake. I'll make things right." "It's too late for that, Kelly. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I loved you once. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the young woman I'd married all those years ago. But that woman was gone, replaced by a stranger who'd tried to destroy me. "Yes," I said finally. "It means I'm not going to visit you in prison." 6 months later, I was working in my shop when Rita brought me the newspaper. The headline read, "Blackwood family sentenced in federal corruption case. Martin got 25 years for racketeering and money laundering. Susan received 15 years for pills trafficking. Rachel was sentenced to 10 years for tax evasion. Kelly got 12 years for embezzlement and conspiracy. Blake Armstrong was serving 18 years in federal prison where his good looks and expensive suits weren't much protection against the other inmates." "You did it, Joe," Rita said, setting down a cup of coffee. "You actually did it." I smiled and returned to my work. A custom dining set for a young couple who just bought their first house. Honest work for honest people. The way it should be. The workshop was busier than ever. Word had spread about the carpenter who had taken down the most powerful family in town, and people respected someone who fought for what was right. Detective Hayes stopped by occasionally to check on me. The federal investigation had expanded to include dozens of other corrupt officials and business leaders. My evidence had been the key that unlocked decades of criminal activity. "Any regrets?" she asked during her last visit. I considered the question while sanding a piece of oak. About exposing criminals and protecting my community? No. About wasting 23 years of my life on people who never deserve my loyalty? Maybe. "What's next for you?" I gestured around my workshop, filled with half-finished projects and the tools of my trade. This, building things that will last, creating something beautiful from raw materials. It's honest work. "And Kelly, do you ever think about visiting her?" I shook my head. Kelly made her choices. She chose money over love, crime over honesty, betrayal over loyalty. Now she gets to live with the consequences. As Detective Hayes left, I returned to my work. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, covering the town in a blanket of white. It was peaceful here in my workshop, surrounded by the smell of wood shavings and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. I'd learned something important over the past year. Sometimes the best revenge isn't violence or cruelty. Sometimes it's simply refusing to be a victim, standing up for what's right, and letting justice take its course. The Blackwood family had underestimated me for decades, treating me like a simple-minded carpenter who couldn't possibly threaten their criminal empire. They'd been wrong about that, just as they'd been wrong about so many other things. I picked up my chisel and returned to work, shaping wood with the same patience and precision I'd used to shape my revenge. Both required careful planning, attention to detail, and the wisdom to know when the job was finished. Outside, the snow continued to fall, but inside my workshop it was warm and bright. I had work to do, an honest living to make, and a life to rebuild, and for the first time in 23 years, I was exactly where I belonged.